thank you for joining us today on Lunchbox Naturalist. I am Hannah Heisel and I am currently a naturalist intern here at Dorothy Pico Nature Center. And today's topic is all about pollinators. So we're going to talk about pollinators, a few that we might find around the Nature Center, a few that maybe you don't even know about, and then just some ways that we can support our pollinators here in Iowa. So what is a pollinator? A pollinator is an organism that helps with the cross-pollination of plants, and 70 to 80% of plants that flower rely on pollinators. Pollinators will visit flowers, and sometimes it might be an accidental pollination that they do. So they might brush up against part of the flower and then move to another flower and then brush that off. A common pollinator that this happens with is a bee. So a honeybee, a bumblebee, carpenter bee. There's so many different types of bees that this could happen with. And as I'm talking, there is a bumblebee flying around in front of me. So if you want to zoom in on him if you can. And he's just going back and forth from the flowers and he's collecting pollen on his feet. And there he goes. They don't stay very long, but they do collect the pollen on their legs. They have pollen brushes or pollen baskets. And if you see a bee and there's yellow on their legs, that's what it is. It's the pollen. Pollen actually means the fertilizing part of flowers. So when we're talking about pollen, that's what we're talking about. There's primary groups of pollinators, and the most common ones are bees, butterflies, wasps, beetles, and flower visiting moths. And hummingbirds, bats, and small mammals also help with pollination. In Iowa, we have 3,000, or in the United States, we have 3,600 species of wild native bees, but in Iowa we only have 300. And bumblebees are the only bees in Iowa that actually form true social colonies. And like I said, there's many different types of bees, so you might see them. I saw one the other day that I hadn't seen before, and I still have yet to identify it. In Iowa, there are 110 species of butterflies and over 200 species of moths, and not all 2,000 moths fly in the day. There's some that fly in the day, and there's also moths that fly at night. Nectar is typically the primary source of food for butterflies, and they obtain that by, they have these really cool mouth parts, kind of like a tongue, and it unrolls, and they can stick it inside the flower, and then they get the nectar that way. Moths, not all moths sip nectar. Some do, but there's some that don't sip nectar at all. There are some that eat enough food as a caterpillar so that they don't have to eat as an adult. And an example of that would be the Luna moth. They strictly just reproduce as a moth and then they eventually die. What are some ways that we can help support our pollinators? We can focus on habitat restoration and habitat management. Also reducing our pesticide use, because that does affect our pollinators and it affects our pollinating plants. There's 3 characteristics for a good pollinator garden, and those are: 1, plant flowering plants; 2, plant them in a sunny spot; and then 3, plant plants that bloom in the spring and the fall. Actually spring through the fall, but it's also important that we plant plants that are native here in Iowa. Another fun fact, 1/3 of all of our foods and beverages are delivered by pollinators, so it's important, especially to protect our pollinators. And in our pollinator garden, we have plenty of flowers and different kind of plants that help our pollinators, like this purple one I have in front of me that's pretty popular. I've seen bees, there's a wasp on there right now. To the left or in the front of it, you can see that there's milkweed, and milkweed primarily hosts monarch butterflies or monarch caterpillars. So a fun thing about monarch caterpillars or butterflies is that they lay their eggs on milkweed plants. I was gonna see if I could find you one, but they're just tiny little dots, and this is where the caterpillar stays until it is ready to form a chrysalis and form into a butterfly. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little white speck there, and that is a caterpillar egg that has hatched. So it is a tiny caterpillar. So somewhere on this plant, on this milkweed plant, there is a caterpillar, but it's hiding from us today. We also have some daisies in our flower garden that the bees seem to like as well. And I've seen our butterflies on there too. So that's pretty interesting. And here at the Nature Center, we also have free-range bees. Although the Nature Center is closed, the trails are still open. So if you happen to come out and check out our trails, you can see the bees flying in and out of our building. So if you decide to come out, check those out, and hopefully when the Nature Center opens, you can check out the beehive that's actually inside the Nature Center. And I would like to invite you to join us on Thursday because we have a live animal lunchtime, and Caitlin is going to be talking about Walt, and you might be able to see him eat as well. Thank you for joining.